Forgotten is becoming a bit of a loose term in this particular series because, truth be told, we're unearthing more tomes of underappreciated and long forgotten horror cinema that is quickly becoming a subgenre in and of itself. But hey, it's fun, isn't it? The fact of the matter remains, sometimes it requires getting our hands a little bit dirty to dig down through the dusty piles of horror to find stuff worthwhile. Now, we've scoured 4 parts of this list already, so it's about high time for a part 5. So let's see what we've got. Hello horror fans, what's going on? And once again, welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. As per usual, I'll be your horror host, Jack Finch, as today we curiously take a look at the top 5 scariest forgotten horror movies, part 5. Whew. For the curious amongst you, that clip was from 2002's Made by Lucky McKee, a fantastically underrated film that also managed to take the #1 spot on part 4 of this list, which leads us to an important reminder. We've already managed to traverse 4 parts of this scariest forgotten horror movies list, and if you haven't seen them already, it will probably be high time for you to go and check them out, because believe me, there is quite a lot to get through. And you know, it's also pretty fun. Anyway, on with the show. Kicking off at number 5, The Ruins, 2008. Truth be told, I've been trying to find a list to slot this particular movie in for quite a while, and I'll admit, it's been difficult. You see, it's not quite cosmic horror, but also kind of is, and while it's not quite survival horror, it also kind of is. It's a little bit of everything mixed up and wrapped up and thrashed together like some killer vines on an ancient temple, but the point is, it's often overlooked, and I think that fact needs to be rectified, because despite its many flaws, The Ruins is actually a downright entertaining piece of horror cinema, and I mean that from a few different angles, but let's see what we're dealing with first. Written and directed by Carter Smith, based upon the novel of the same name by Scott Smith, The Ruins tells the tale of 2 young American couples, Jeff and Amy, and Eric and Stacy, who head off together on a vacation to Mexico and unwittingly end up at the archaeological dig site of a set of remote Mayan ruins out in the jungle. As you do, you know. As the group slowly unravel the strange secrets behind the ruins, the film quickly takes a turn and descends into a tour de force of body horror and psychological trauma. I won't say anything more because although the crux of this film is relatively straightforward, the way it plays out is where the true horror of this film lies. In many ways, The Ruins is the definition of body horror, and some of the psychological implications of this film are genuinely horrifying. Starring Jenna Malone and Jonathan Tucker as Jeff and Amy, the pair really take the reins in this film and deliver some frantically fantastic performances propped up by the rest of the supporting cast. In fact, there are few poor scenes in this film, which begs the question as to why it was so poorly reviewed, but yeah, whatever. Each to their own, right? It's important to note that the film has 2 alternate endings, both of which are pretty bleak, but they pale in comparison to how bleak the ending of the book is. Why don't you find out for yourselves and see which one is worse? I'll leave it to you. Swinging in at number 4, Delivery, The Beast Within, 2013.
As a reality show producer, you live for moments like this. This is what makes the show. These unplanned dramatic.
And this film may be a little difficult to get your hands on, but if you can, it's worth it. During a time where Paranormal Activity and other such found footage copycats were making their questionable way in horror cinema, one horror film flew directly under the radar that may have, in fact, managed to surpass them all. I say may because this film is divisive by nature, in the sense that you'll either love it for its cinematic craft or hate it for its unique approach. In my opinion, Delivery is an incredibly clever film, and if you're willing to dig for it, there is a hoard of horror goodness to be found. Written and directed by Brian Netto alongside Adam Schindler, Delivery tells the tale of a young couple that are documenting their first pregnancy alongside a family-orientated reality TV show. Now, if, like me, you think that's a pretty good premise in a subgenre that is often watered down with strange and often misguided narrative plausibility, then you will thoroughly enjoy this film. The young couple in question, Kyle and Rachel Massey, witness their planned pregnancy quickly spiral out of control as the production crew frantically captures a series of unexplained events that leads the expecting parents to believe that their pregnancy isn't like any other. Yeah, I'll say no more, but you can kind of see where this film is going, right? Now let me tell you, for a film that doesn't exactly promise that much from the off, the final act of this film is absolutely insane, and I really mean that. It's something else entirely. Now, I also say this quite critically. I'm not entirely sure whether this film needed to be a found footage mockumentary, and I do think it could have gotten away without the gimmick, but on the other hand, I believe it adds something to this film that wraps up neatly with its ending. There's something about the car crashiness of hearing in parentheses interviews about the horrors that are about to unfold before your eyes, and in many ways it holds that inevitability like an ominous mobile above a demonic toddler's crib. Yeah, that's a pretty apt metaphor. Good acting, good film, crazy ending. Give it a watch. Next up at number 3, The Canal, 2014. Damn, this film is good. And whilst 5 years might not exactly constitute the need for the term forgotten, 2014's The Canal certainly flew beneath the radar, and it didn't get the credit it deserves compared to some of the more lackluster horror movies released that year. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Annabelle, because if you're looking for a ghost story or anything of the ilk of the paranormal, then forget about demonic dolls, because you need to be taking a look at haunted film reels. Yeah, I'll say no more, but The Canal is awesome. Written and directed by Ivan Kavanagh, a pretty fantastic Irish director who's slowly making waves in all the right places. The Canal tells the tale of David, a film archivist in the midst of insomnia, who begins to unravel the infidelity of his wife Alice. At the same time, he realizes that his home was also the setting of a brutal turn of the century murder. Yeah, that's a lot to take on. Now, whilst it sounds like there's a lot going on in this film from the off, and in many ways there is, The Canal manages it well, and it ends up playing out like an age-old ghost story with so many twists and turns throughout that the choking sense of its narrative is what spurs on the creeping panic. It stars Rupert Evans as David, whose performance in this film is pretty damn remarkable given the pretty frantic approach to the film, but the real knockout role goes to Steve Oram, who, for those of you that know Top 5 Scary videos in and out, is one of the most awesome British actors going at the minute, who plays Detective McNamara, a man who knows that something is up and manages to underpin 2014's The Canal with his acting clout. Also, the young actor Callum Heath, who plays David's creepy yet endearing son Billy, is also pretty damn awesome in this film, and for this horror film, getting the delicate balance of creepy kids not being annoying is pretty damn difficult to do. It reminded me of another child actor, Sam, from 2014's The Babadook, which also came out the very same year as this film, and in many ways, strangely enough, is an incredibly similar horror movie. Yeah, it's weird. Whilst I think The Canal got overshadowed by The Babadook, it definitely is worth a second look. Coming in at number 2, Let's Scare Jessica to Death, 1971.
Nobody's here.
And I know that a few of you guys called for this film to appear on our list, and rightly so, because in many ways 1971's Let's Scare Jessica to Death is the literal definition of forgotten horror that emerged during a time where horror cinema was trying its damnedest to churn out horror classic after horror classic. There was a lot bubbling under the surface in the early 70s, and the era of campy monster-driven horror was at its peak. Hammer horror was in full swing, Britain was in the midst of forging its folk horror with the blood on Satan's claw, overt vampires and Satanism lurked around every cinematic corner. And what did this film do? None of those things. Well, I mean, kind of, because in a few ways this is a vampire movie, but in a way that you may have not imagined. Instead, it decided to employ the fears of mental instability, a taboo subject that was brushed off at the time as brash feminist diatribe. But when we look back, holy moly, Let's Scare Jessica to Death is freaking terrifying, and it did things its own way. Written and directed by John Hancock, loosely based upon the 1871 novel Carmilla, written by Joseph Sheridan LaFanu, the film itself tells the tale of Jessica, a woman that has recently been released from a mental institution back into the care of her husband Duncan, who lives in a rundown farmhouse in upstate New York. There, the couple comes across a mysterious drifter named Emily, and then suddenly Jessica becomes wrapped up in a supernatural tale with an air of the ancient, and she quickly becomes questioning her own sanity. Part of the beauty behind this film is the uncertainty of its narrative. For a film made in 1971, exposition eludes it, and that was a brave thing to do for a filmmaker. Let's Scare Jessica to Death doesn't treat its audience like idiots. There isn't any explanatory vampire overlords lurking within the shadows. In many ways, it manages to handle the paranormal effortlessly, a very mature thing to do for the halcyon days of horror cinema. Also, the score to this movie is insane, and the sound design as a whole is so many levels of creepy that it's worth watching just for that. Yeah, this one is a gem. Give it a watch. And finally, at our number 1 spot, Vacancy, 2007.
Hello? Hello? There's no one there.
I'm still not entirely sure why Vacancy doesn't get the credit it deserves. Honestly, it kind of baffles me that we don't consider Vacancy as the precursor to the home invasion horror subgenre that quickly emerged at the beginning of the 2010s. Because it is. But you know why this film far surpasses any of its predecessors? Vacancy does away with gore. Now, don't get me wrong, this film handles some absolutely horrifying subject matter, and for many of you that have seen it, it's probably the main reason why you still don't stay at motels on dusty old highways to this day, but it never gives in to the same primal restraints that gore porn cinema seemed to do with the likes of Hostel and the wider Saw franchise. The film handles itself with restraint, and to me, it plays out more like a Hitchcock film more than anything else. Now, don't get me wrong, this film isn't entirely Hitchcockian, its prime incentive is to scare you, but it's smart, it's psychologically harrowing, and Luke Wilson's and Kate Beckinsale's performance in this film is remarkable. Honestly, don't listen to the critics with this film. Vacancy is awesome. Directed by Nimrod Antal, great name, and written by Mark L. Smith, Vacancy tells the tale of a married couple on the verge of having a divorce, David and Amy Fox, played by Wilson and Beckinsale, who after taking a wrong turn on a remote mountain road have to take shelter at a motel for the night. And that's where they meet the creepy manager Mason, played by Frank Whaley, and then things quickly descend into horror chaos. Listen, this film doesn't employ a sprawling plot, it has a minimal cast, it's shot on a single location, but the pacing and performance are what spurs this film on. It quickly becomes riveting, and whilst being genuinely distressing in most places, it's also thoroughly entertaining. Vacancy got canned for disgusting subject matter, but really, compared to some films, it's A to B horror that genuinely delivers. For an audience that is smart enough to understand that suspense needs payoff in a world where technology is indeed employed for some pretty nefarious deeds like the ones in this film, Vacancy got it damn right. Give it a watch. Well, there we have it, horror fans, our list for the top 5 scariest forgotten horror movies, part 5. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree, have any more to add of your own? Then let us know in the comment section below, and hell, who knows, maybe we can even do a part 6. This series is quickly becoming a catalogue. Before we depart from today's video, let's first take a quick look at some of your more creative comments from over the past few days. Let's do that right now. Michael Cooley says, great stuff and I like the new look for the channel. So Jack, what would a cult have to offer you to get you to join? Well, first off, thank you very much, Michael, and I'm glad you also asked that question. Nothing. Cults are my mortal enemy. I will never join one because, as Groucho Marx said, I don't care to belong to any club that will have me as a member. Also, I just hate organised fun, so yeah, there you go. And finally, Jen Snowball says, Jack, the narrative of your cinematic critiques are exquisite and apt, my friend. Whew. Gosh, this made my day a little bit there. Thank you. Well, on that heartfelt note, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for in today's video. Cheers, stick around all the way until the end. If you were a fan of this video or just top 5 scary videos in general, then please be a dear and hit that thumbs up button, as well as that subscribe button, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. As per usual, I've been your horror host, Jack Finch. You've been watching top 5 scary videos. Until next time, you take it easy.